Today I'm going to be talking about the somewhat controversial novel by Hanya Yanagihara, A Little Life. Now, this novel comes with a lot of baggage. A lot of people have read it, a lot of people have referenced it as agony porn. It was released, I believe, in 2015 and it was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. It seems to be quite Marmite, people seem to love it or hate it, and the reactions to this have been quite extreme. And I think those reactions became amplified, should I say, during lockdown, in which a lot of people seem to be picking this book up. I thought, I've got to give it a go. I want to kind of know what everyone's talking about. So this August, whilst I was in Edinburgh, I was at the festival. And if you've been to the Edinburgh Festival before, you'll know that it involves a lot of walking. I was doing around 28 to 30,000 steps a day. You shift around the city a lot. So I thought to myself, I want an audiobook to listen to whilst I'm putting in this many hours walking. So I picked this one up. Not the lightest read to have with me, but it felt like it might suit, especially as it rains there a lot, a kind of a listen in the rain whilst walking around the city. First things first though, let's give a little overview of this book. I think I might slightly dabble in very gentle spoiler territory. So if you have yet to read this book and don't want to know really anything much about it at all, I would suggest click off this video and maybe find someone else, because I don't think I can talk about this, even in short form, without maybe giving some lightish spoilers. I'm not going to mention any events that happen and go into too many details about kind of specific things that happen, but I am going to give an overview of the kind of the feel of the novel and moments in which the tone changes within the novel. And if you don't want to know those kind of specifics, then yeah, this might not be for you. This book is about four friends who go to college together, and then we follow their lives as they move into their sort of first apartment in New York, and we follow their careers and their personal lives and the highs and lows of those relationships and their relationships together. But the story sort of then veers to focusing very much on the character of Jude. Jude has had a very troubled past. His friends can sense it, but Jude doesn't share anything with them. And as the novel goes on, it is revealed exactly what happened to Jude in his past that has led to him being the way he is. And that's it. That's all this brick of a book is, near 800 pages of us finding out those things that happened to him and how that has affected his life. That's really what this book is, and it isn't anything really more than that, although it very much is as well. However, I can't review this book without talking about my very strange journey with this book. So as mentioned, I listened to this on audiobook whilst I was in Edinburgh. I downloaded the audiobook to my phone because I didn't want 4G to be cutting out or anything to interrupt my listening experience, but something happened in the download. I don't know what, I don't know how, but when I downloaded it to my phone, the 6 parts that the book came in seemed to rearrange. I don't know what happened, but part 1 was actually part 6, and part 6 was actually part 1. So I listened to this book in reverse order, which, if you've read this book, is a very strange experience. But I was so invested from my listening time with this book that I then had to pick it up and read it in the correct order. Now, I didn't realise I was listening to this book in the incorrect order until I reached part 6. I had got through nearly 30 hours, or something like 28 hours of this book without realising that I had listened to it in reverse. It was a very strange experience. I thought it was something interesting that Hanya Yanagihara was doing. I thought to myself, wow, isn't this an interesting book? She's giving us nothing. I am having to work so hard to figure everything out. But because they were quite large sections, like, a near 35-hour book broken down into 6 sections, so each section was a good 7-8 hours long. Because the sections are so long, I was able to really dig into that section and figure the things out from it before it would take a radical cut and go somewhere completely different. And I just thought that was the style. Honestly, I just thought to myself, this is quite interesting. However, I did start to realise I'd listened to reviews about this book because everyone, it had been so polarising. People said that the second half of it, literally the second half of this huge book, is just torture porn. It just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. However, because I listened to it in reverse order, my first connection to this book was nothing but the horrific stuff. And I was thinking to myself, my God, if this book gets worse and worse and worse, and this is how we're starting, I am in for one hell of a ride here. But obviously it didn't. It started to get lighter. It started to get a little bit brighter. And I thought to myself, the start of this book was far more horrific than the second half. What are all people talking about? And that's when it started to click. And that's when I went into a bookshop, picked the book up, and tried to find the pages and the starting points, and realised that I had been listening to it in reverse order. But there is something about listening to the book in that order that gave me a different perspective on this book. I started off with all of this past and all of these kind of horrific things, and this relationship sort of at the end of its course, and then sort of worked my way back to kind of like when times were a little better and times were a little, and it was interesting. I don't know what else to say. Now, obviously, I have now read the book in the correct order in which it should be read, and I can say that, yeah, you should read it in the correct way. But that's not to say that anything was damaged or lost by the process in what I did. And I think having read this twice, this 800-page book twice, I have become so utterly absorbed into this world that I think it's very good. I might say I think this book is excellent, but I can absolutely understand that this book is triggerwarning.com. You have to know what you're going into with this book, and if you didn't, I could see it being quite damaging. I could see the themes within this book are so heavy, are so dark, and it never lets up. That's the thing. It never lets up. And if you have any experience of the things that the character Jude has experienced in this book, then I think it would be a very tough read indeed. Now, I've heard all the things in which apparently Hanya Yanagihara didn't do much research, didn't talk to many people about the issues that are within this, and that maybe that's not a good duty of care. But she is an author, and she's writing a book, and she has a goal in mind. And I think that's what I'm going to get into when I talk about the kind of review of this book as a whole, and what I think she was trying to do. So if we're looking at this book with the idea of kind of, shall I review it? How can I review it? What am I talking about? So let's look at the characters. I thought the characters, especially the main two characters in this, were incredibly well-rounded. I was just utterly invested in their world. Now, there are a couple of side characters. We have the architect and the artist, who they start to sort of disappear slowly as the story starts focusing in on what we should be focusing in on. And I can imagine some readers might have wanted more from them, but I think if you've ever been a part of a friendship group, sometimes those relationships change, and sometimes those relationships, they become just sort of background to your main relationship. They become the background. They aren't the main focus. And I know this is a story that starts off sort of talking about them all, but really, from the very first page of this book, I understood this is Jude's story, and we're learning about Jude. And it's always, from the start of it, given the focus onto Jude. So people's complaint about this not really giving as much time to two of the other characters, that didn't bother me, because from the first chapter, I knew that this was a story about Jude. Now, obviously, I listened to it in reverse order, but even from from opening the first page and reading it properly, I kind of knew that. So I don't quite understand that when people say the other characters sort of fade away. Well, of course they do. This isn't their story. We're following Jude. He's our protagonist. So that didn't really become a problem for me. I thought, the characters were incredibly well-rounded. I was utterly invested in them. I knew kind of how they were as people, what they were thinking, what they were feeling at every single moment on every single page. As you're going through this journey, and the frustrations and the dynamics between the characters are building, those have all been earned. Those have all been earned throughout the writing. And I have no complaints with the kind of the characters in general and how they were portrayed or how they were written. I thought she did an excellent job. And I thought the writing style was fantastic. I really did. I really loved the way this book was written. I felt like the words just flowed across the page. The prose was beautiful. It was never jarring. It was sort of poetic. And I felt like even when the horrific stuff was being talked about, it never went into graphic detail. Now, I've read a lot of bizarro fiction, I've read a lot of kind of, horror and those kind of things, and so I'm quite desensitized when it comes to reading things of a horrific nature, but those things tend to go very much far more into the explaining the nitty-gritty, the ins and outs. Now, I feel like Hanya Yanagihara did an incredible job of giving you enough to destroy you, but it was never like explicit. The things that were happening, the things that you were being told were horrific and explicit, but it's in the detail, the specifics of what is explained. You never get any of those kind of details, and I thought that was such a clever, smart way to kind of write this book, because then your imagination is just destroying you and everything is kind of crippling you in that moment, but at the same time it never became graphic, and I really appreciated it for that. Now, it is a long book, you can't escape it, and does it feel its length? No, I read it twice. I read it twice in not a very large amount of time. I think I was in Edinburgh for just over a week, and I'd finished the audiobook with 2 days left to go. Then I picked up the book, and it took me another week to finish it again. So I don't think, normally big, large books like this, they feel their length if it's taking me over 2 weeks to read them. I know that maybe there might need to be an edit. Now, I think you could probably justify that there's some sections in this that could have been edited down, but I think that would have escaped what Hanya Yanagihara was trying to do. Now, this brings me to kind of crux of this review. I think this is a novel that is about, can I write a character? Can I make a character go through something in which there is no hope? Can we say, in this world in which we live in which hope is a drug, in which we cling on to hope? I think hope is the most important thing in all of our lives, because without hope we are kind of lost. But I think what Hanya Yanagihara was doing was, even if it was just an experiment with herself, was saying, can I write a character, can I write a book in which there is no hope? Can I write a past that is so brutal, so flawed, so crushing, that there is no way to save that person? There is no way, there is no coming back, because you cannot escape scars that deep. You just cannot. And I think Hanya Yanagihara has deliberately made this book as long as she has, in order for us to feel that, to understand that pain, to understand that this character has no hope. And she leaves the reader at the end feeling deflated, feeling destroyed, because our hope has disappeared as well. Now, whether you go to a book for that kind of experience is entirely up to you, and whether you get angry at this book for making you feel that way, that is entirely up to you. But she does the job she sets out to do, and it makes you question the ideas of hope. It makes you question your friendships and your friends' pasts and what they might have been through, and kind of what they might be clinging on to, and the reasons why they might do the things they do, or they might not be able to escape what's happened to them. I think that's why I really enjoyed this book, because it's taught me things, or it's made me look at the way I view friendships and my friends' pasts, and my attitude is always, take it on the chin, things will get better, let's all have a laugh. That's how I kind of tend to live my life. And I think this book kind of makes me question that idea of going, no, there could be some of your friends which there is a certain part of them that is never ever going to be healed, and there is no hope for that side of them, or there is no hope in that moment. And I think this is set in a fantasy world. I don't think this is real life. I'm reading this and going, this is someone who's created a world in which they're throwing everything they can at a character and letting us see that hopelessness. So I wouldn't actually say, even though, this book kind of feels like it's, it has a realism to it, she deliberately, there's no real technology mentioned in the book. Like, if a character answers the phone, it's never like they answered their mobile or they got out their iPhone. It's just they took the call. They rung this person. There are no dates given. The only way we know there's a passing of time is through like events, like Christmas has come up or Thanksgiving has come round again, and we know that time is passing that way, but we're given no dates and we're given no time. And I think that's really smart, because it helps make this work timeless. You could read this book in 15 years time and it will still probably feel relevant. It will still probably feel like it could take place right now. And I think that's why this was awarded or put onto the Booker shortlist. I think that's why this book got the praise it did, because Hanya Yanagihara is actually doing many, many things very intelligently and really well. This is just a ramble review. And obviously I approached this book in a completely different way. I read it in reverse, or I listened to it in reverse, then I read it correctly. I've become very connected to this piece of work. It's going to stay with me for a long time to come. For better or worse, you know, for the horrific things that are in it, or for the way that it goes. But yeah, I do understand when people are upset by this book. But I think to pass it off as agony porn is doing a real disservice to the author. I think the author knows exactly what she's doing, and I think she's done it incredibly well. You can't dispute the craft of the writing. You can't dispute the aims of the novel and what she's trying to do. And you can't dispute the fact that she achieves those things. It's just whether or not you want to be put through that journey. And I think that's where people have become quite angry. But yeah, that's me. Would I give this book a star rating? Oh, I find star ratings tricky. I think this is a 4.5 star book, 4-star book. It's not 5 stars because I think still there are elements in which I could have said a light edit could have been done. Not a heavy edit. I don't think this book could have been much shorter, but I think there are some things where I was a little bit like, yeah, I get that now. I'm feeling that now. You don't need to make me feel that thing anymore. But she did. But yeah, again, that was part of the process of what this book was trying to do. Anywho, I have rambled long enough. Thanks very much for watching, if you have. If you have any thoughts and feelings or opinions on this book, please comment down below. If you think I'm wrong in anything that I've said, great, let me know. We can have a little discussion underneath. But as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Cheers.